Ladies and gentlemen, as we are rearing and gearing towards the final leg of our summit, we are onwards to our penultimate session of the day where we're going to be talking about advocating on COVID-19, the mental health, very importantly, and also a women's work-life balance, as I said. So this will be a special talk that will be rendered by the founder and chairperson of Empower Foundation, Ms. Neerja Birla would be speaking to us. Well, I have to let you know that through Empower, Mrs. Birla hopes to spread awareness about mental health, alleviate stigma, and also provide that quality care to individuals from all walks of life and from all sections of the society. So having said that, it's over to you, Ms. Birla.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm really glad to be part of this year's Economic Times Women's Healthcare Summit, even though I couldn't join you live. The goal of this summit to foster ideas and start conversations around strengthening the holistic wellness of women is also a mission that is very close to my heart. We've been dealing with this pandemic for over a year now, in fact, a year and a half now, and we're starting to see the long-term effects of dealing with the global crisis, especially on mental health. Some of us have been working from home, and some of us have been on the front lines, working essential jobs on crucial frontiers. We're trying to overcome the economic fallout, the added work pressures, family pressures, the loss of social contact, and the ongoing stories of loss and suffering and grief. All of this builds up to a great amount of stress and trauma, and I think you'd all agree that we're not entirely okay. We all are struggling with something or the other. I'm reminded of a line from the book Notes from a Nervous Planet by Matt Haig, and it goes, "How can I stop my mind being overloaded when the world is overloaded?" I'd like to talk to you about one of these things we've been struggling with, the issue of women's mental health and trying to maintain a work-life balance while working from home. Work from home, or WFH, is the new way of life now. But does this also mean work for her? Does work from home work for her? Work-life balance was already a nebulous concept before this pandemic. I doubt any of us truly cracked it in real life. And now, with the lines between home and office officially non-existent, how do we make work from home work for us? Especially since it looks to be the modus operandi for the near future. The work from home scenario is particularly problematic of the intersection of pre-existing issues around gender roles, wage equality, social perceptions, and corporate structures. Take the case of a young working professional. Let's call her Miss A. She's in her late 30s, works in a leadership role in the HR department of a global company with a global presence, and lives in a metro city with her partner and 2 school-going kids. She has been working from home with a makeshift office in her apartment. Her day typically begins early. She gets up well before the rest of the family to get the day's cooking and some chores done before the kids wake up. Even though her husband pitches in with childcare and some chores, she still has to plan everything out so that the house functions smoothly, especially since the housekeeper can't come to work during the lockdown. Beneath the veneer of modernity and progress, there are still deep-rooted gender norms entrenched into our family and social structure, which is across the vast cultural landscape of India. So women invariably end up bearing the greater burden of domestic responsibilities like childcare, elder care, household chores. A pre-COVID survey by the Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development found that Indian women do 6 hours of unpaid work in a day compared to the less than an hour for men. This number would have obviously increased since the pandemic. So let's go back to our story about Miss A's day. So the news plays on the television as the family has breakfast. She worries over the number of positive cases and deaths and calls in to check on her parents who live in respective hometowns. Most women, like Miss A, are the emotional support and the emotional anchors of their families, allaying their fears, easing their worries, and giving them strength. Over a period of time, this can become extremely fatiguing, especially when women don't have the time to process their own emotions or grief or suffering or take even a bit of time off for their self care. For example, it's hardly past 8 and Miss A's phone is ringing away. She leads a fairly large team who are also working from home, so she has to coordinate their work, ensure that everyone is able to perform adequately. It feels like she has a million decisions to make each day. Her role as a leader means that the buck stops at her, whether it's about the team's performance, their safety, their job, security, even everyday issues and agendas. Even though she has such a pivotal role in her organization, her work would normally take a little bit of a backseat back home because traditionally the family feels that the husband's job is far more important. This means that on most days, she's the one who has to scurry between her work and the endless domestic crises that keep propping up. For example, she'd be probably helping her kids with their online classes while also texting her team members and evaluating reports they send to her, and all at the same time. She worries that her colleagues would wonder how come she is taking many more breaks than her male colleagues. She worries that she's not spending enough time with her kids, who are more anxious and lonelier right now because they're all cooped up and inside all day. The only constant nagging thought in her mind is her guilt that she's failing at parenting and she's failing at work and that she's just not doing enough at either place. In the current scenario, it's not unusual for someone like Miss A to deal with anxieties related to her job performance and job security. Due to the wage gap between the genders and the social perceptions that value men's jobs over women's, there has been a notable exodus of women from the workforce. A McKinsey study shows that 1 out of 4 women in the corporate world are leaving their jobs or downshifting their careers. And this job loss for women is twice as high as that for men globally. The disproportionate mental health burden on women could also go up to widen the gender gap in the workplace. By the end of the day, Miss A is pretty often exhausted, mentally drained, and sad that she just didn't get to do a video call with her friends like she's been wanting to since a while. Miss A's story is just one example. Women who live in joint families, all women who live alone also face their own set of challenges. And then there are many women who have to deal with the shadow pandemic of domestic abuse when forced to socially isolate or stay in a lockdown with partners who are actually abusive or who are dealing with substance addictions. A UN survey shows that there has been an 85% increase in domestic violence since the onset of the pandemic. We've got all these different roles to play simultaneously. Since the onset of the pandemic, it seems like we're just bombarded by stressors in every facet of our life. This cocktail of stress, anxiety, and fear combined with social isolation has had an adverse effect on the mental wellness of women. In a poll conducted by the Kaiser Family Foundation, 83% of their women users reported a significant increase in depression this past year. A study by the Care International found that when compared to men, women are 3 times more likely than men to suffer from concerns such as anxiety, loss of appetite, sleeplessness. There has also been an increase in the number of women dealing with post-traumatic stress disorder, even though they may not be formally diagnosed with it. This includes symptoms like severe anxiety, lack of sleep, and physical reactions like frequent sweating, breathing trouble, and nausea. So, between the stress of working from home and juggling our work and personal lives that are riddled with daily emergencies and crises, how do we find a balance? Well, in my own struggle with the issue of work-life balance, I've started to feel that this pressure to find balance itself is an added balance, is itself an added stress. In my reading, I came across this concept by Denise Green in a book called Work-Life Brilliance. And I'd like to share some of the insights with on this topic with all of you today. It's pretty evident by now that it's quite impossible to achieve work-life balance. In our hyper-connected world, it's in our best interests to give up trying to unblur the lines between work and personal life. Instead, let's look at a work-life integration. or as Denise Green calls it, work-life brilliance. The end goal of managing our work and personal lives must be that we can finally have a sense of freedom and agency over our own lives instead of struggling trapped in unhealthy patterns. At its core, it's about taking control of four things in your life. The first is taking control of one's body and mind, nourishing it and keeping it healthy. Taking care of one's body and mind is not a luxury, it is an absolute necessity, especially for women. As the saying goes, you cannot serve from an empty cup. So, taking care of the mind is extremely important, and taking care of the body too. Taking care of the mind involves things like being mindful and getting help so that you can learn how to process your emotions and regulate your state of mental wellness. The second step towards a work life brilliance is about taking control of our behaviors and being conscious of how they can affect our lives. So, for example, habits like procrastination, poor communication issues, body language issues, behaviors that affect one's confidence and self esteem are some of the examples that are silently adding to your work life problem. So, take the time to audit yourself to find behaviors that you need to improve on or amplify. In my case, one of the behaviors that I'm trying to change is the way that I multitask. I used to try to do too many things at once, and apart from adding a lot of stress, I just felt that it didn't help me accomplishing anything. So now what I do is I multiple task and not multitask at the same time. I arrange tasks in order of priority and give each one my full attention while I'm at it. So this has made a really big difference in my level of stress. The third area that we need to cultivate for work-life brilliance is our relationship with people. So surround yourself with people who will uplift you, bring people into your life who inspire you to do the things that you otherwise wouldn't. Build open channels of communication with the people in your life, your partner, family members, colleagues, friends. One of the things that I've learned is to be clear, concise, and kind in the way I communicate. Sometimes it may be hard to say what's on your mind, but one needs to find a way to do that because no one is a mind reader. So say it clearly and communicate it in a well so that you don't complicate ideas and without making it awkward. The fourth and the last area is how we deal with things, our spaces, possessions, technology, and most importantly, our time. So this is about eliminating clutter and increasing the beauty and functionality around us, using technology wisely and mindfully to fulfill our goals and connect with others, so that we can organize our days in order to achieve our highest goals. So this has been a huge priority for me as I'm trying to declutter and reorganize things around me and my spaces. Being able to manage your work, taking care of your home, and maintain your wellness, mental wellness, these are not things that can be done in a sprint. It's a slow and steady marathon. You have to train yourself, change things about yourself, and even relearn behaviors to be able to get there. I'd like to point out three specific behaviors that all of us can relate to. One, avoid the perils of victim mode. We tend to victimize ourselves, often blaming ourselves for everything that goes wrong. Or we tend to see ourselves as victims of bad luck and fate. This only adds to a feeling of powerlessness, and over a period of time, it takes away one's feeling of control and creating stress and anxiety instead. We all go through our share of negative experiences. We cannot always control what happens, but we can control how we respond to it. So believe you are not a victim because you are not. You are strong and you're incredible. 2. Get off the guilt train. Women tend to carry a great deal of guilt around. We're always trying to please everyone, and if that doesn't happen, we feel guilty. Right now, most of us have a list of things at the back of our minds, of things we should be doing. And this list is never ending. And we feel that we'll never have the time to get to do all of it. And then we start feeling guilty that we're just not doing enough. So I find that's another shift that I'm trying to do, is that instead of finding things that we should be doing, let's focus on the things that we can do and must do on any given day. And when you need to say no to people or to tasks, say it with grace and not with guilt. You're doing the best you can, and that really is enough. The third important thing is establishing routines and rhythms. For those of us who are not the most organized, let me tell you that setting up a routine or a daily rhythm in which you can get through your daily tasks is absolutely invaluable. It gives you a sense of control over your time. It creates a feeling of certainty about your day and gives you a definitive rush of happiness at the end of the day. The one silver lining out of this pandemic is that it has shone a spotlight on the structural inequalities related to women's labor and societal problems around gender roles. It has created a window of opportunity for us to make a sustainable shift in personal habits as well as corporate and government policies on women's work, wages, and holistic wellness. Already, we have learned to be more resilient, practice positive habits, improve our communication, and even upskill ourselves. Research published by the United Nations, Harvard Business Review, and other global platforms regarding the performance of women in leadership during the pandemic already shows that women are better suited to lead during a crisis. This has been shifting the conversation about gender gap and the need for more women in leadership positions, not just in corporates, but also in governance. I'm sure we're all looking forward to being part of a great change going forward. But as the saying goes, change starts with the self. By focusing on strengthening ourselves and improving our personal strategies, we'll be better prepared to handle the overlapping work-life areas in our lives. There may be more challenges like the pandemic in the future, things we can't change, but we can change ourselves and be better prepared to deal with anything that comes our way. So to conclude, let me share a line from a favorite poem, Invictus. I thank whatever gods may be for my inconquerable soul. As for the poet, we are the captains of souls and masters of our fate. So take charge of your lives, get the help you need, make yourself stronger, and start your journey towards brilliance in work and life today. Thank you.
Well, Mrs. Birla, while hearing you, there were so many touch points that you mentioned that we need to be mindful of while shouldering the different hues of our own roles as women, right? So many things felt so relatable and felt like adages. Thank you so very much, Mrs. Birla, for speaking to us and for those great lifestyle tips. Thank you very, very much. And on that note, ladies and gentlemen, finally, it's time now that we got to arm ourselves because we are indeed fortunate to be hearing now, ladies and gentlemen, as part of our final and one of the most important session of the day, we'll be hearing from a spiritual guru, an expert about the mantra for healthy living and also healthy thinking. Remember, they say it's all in the mind. So I will be just connected to her just in a bit. I'll be right back. Please stay tuned and brace yourself.